Taking this further, looking at a few top 10 droughts with high mortality worldwide over the 1900 to 2013 period, and these are ranked by number, not necessarily the severity of the drought. There are metrics based on temperature and soil moisture and so on that can be used to rank droughts, but here they are ranked by mortality. Okay, so again, the note is, while there were drought disasters occurring after 1983, which is the latest one shown here, these events were not among the top 10 largest in number of deaths. Okay, so that's the difference. When you do it by other factors, you will get a different ranking. Nonetheless, to get a sense of how we are progressing, let's say in disaster management, remember, drought is the largest killer when it comes to extreme weather events. China, 300,000 deaths. Sorry, there's that 3 million deaths. Bangladesh, India, Soviet Union, China, Ethiopia, which became a massive famine problem that was got world's attention with horrendous looking emaciated children. Sudan, which also had a problem at the same time, it's the same region, and Ethiopia again before that in 1973. So you can see that the numbers are staggering: 3 million, almost 2 million, 1.5 million, 1.25 million, down at 100,000. So the smallest one here is 100,000 in Ethiopia in 1973. Okay, and of course you can go back to 1928 and imagine the population that was much lower, and you can imagine what fraction of the total population was 3 million. That's not a small number when you look at that way, right? World's top 10 largest droughts, 1900 to 2013 again, ranked by the number of people affected. Okay, this changes the ordering a little bit. Again, while there were drought disasters after 2009, so this goes now up to 2009, these events were not among the top largest in terms of the number of people affected. So here now you get India taking almost all of the top 10 events, with China taking 4, so 6 and 4. So 1987, India hardly has back-to-back droughts, but 1986-87 was one of the rare back-to-back droughts. There was one earlier in the 1920s, I think. There's one in 2014 and 15. So that affected 300 million. 2002, another El Nino-related drought. The 86-87 was a drought, was an El Nino, by the way. 2002 was an El Nino with a slightly different pattern of warming. 300 million affected. India in 1972, another big El Nino. 200 million affected. 1965, I think, was also a mild El Nino. 82-83 was a big El Nino. So you can see that 2000 was a La Nina, but nonetheless there was other factors that contributed to 50 million people being affected. In China, 94, mild El Nino with the Indian Ocean dipole event. 2002, a dateline warming or a Central Pacific El Nino. 2009 was a Central Pacific El Nino. I think 88 was a La Nina, but that affected 49 million people over China. So I'm mentioning the El Nino events, La Nina events, and Indian Ocean dipole because there is a climate factor involved. So it can be natural disaster, but as we said before, nature provides a drought, but humans make a famine, right? So how severely the drought ends up affecting people depends on what the vulnerability of the particular community or society is. This is about the trend in heat waves. That period I should have noted. It's multiple decades. So this is looking at heat wave days per decade. Sorry, you can look up this paper to see which period was covered. It's multiple decades, that much I remember. Goes up to 2014, I think. And you can see that the number of heat wave days per decade basically has increased pretty much everywhere. This is two different data sets. This is the Hadley Center Global Hydrological Network data, and this one is from a Berkeley Earth data, so they are slightly different data sets, but you can see that the results here are common, but this one captures more of the global southern hemisphere as well. And India here is completely missing, whereas this one gives India a lot of heat wave days. Again, this is length of the longest heat wave in days per decade. These spots light up again, and this is the Middle East desert. You can imagine that this is already dry and hot. If it's getting more hot, and if they are running out of oil, and it's already geopolitically unstable, you can imagine that that's going to be a disaster. Plus the conflicts that keep going on here: Yemen, Syria, Iran, Iraq, and so on, and North Africa, of course, Libya. There are issues. So the health impacts are going to be really exacerbated by these disasters, heat waves. Okay, average intensity. So a heat wave is defined here, just for a brief introduction, as a 95th percentile of the temperature at every grid point, which lasts for a minimum of 3 days, I think. And this is intensity per degree centigrade per decade. So these look like small numbers, but it really depends on what is the mean temperature already. Right? And these are cumulative intensities, where you take a season and you add up all the heat waves defined this way in each season, and you can see that cumulative intensity is really high here again over the Middle East, North Africa region, which has got severe water stress, severe geopolitical instabilities, and so on and so forth. And of course there are also population centers, which makes it much worse for health outcomes as well. What are the public health impact of heat waves? This will include heat illness, just heat stroke kind of things, exacerbation of chronic obstructive pulmonary diseases or COPD and asthma, as well as cardiovascular disease, both strokes and heart attacks, short-term population displacement that results in a relatively brief need for humanitarian assistance, to include safe shelter, water, food, security, sanitation, and healthcare among those seeking relief from heat in their homes. So, for example, pre-monsoon season over India is a heat wave season as well, and the farmers want to be out there in the field, cleaning up the field and getting it ready for the monsoon, which will arrive at the end of May, which hopefully always arrives at the end of the May, but already every year is becoming crazier and crazier. So there is this combination of seasonality, climatological heat waves, global warming, and livelihoods that combine together to create massive health outcomes. So here again, while there were heat wave disasters occurring after 2010, these events were not among the top largest in terms of the number of deaths. So these are again rated by mortality for 1900 to 2013. So these are now number of deaths per nation. So Russia 2010, 55,736. 2003 Europe got hammered, so Italy, France, Spain, Germany very unexpectedly had a massive mortality, including Portugal, Greece and Italy in 1987, El Nino. India 1998, El Nino. It was the pre-monsoon which was the top killer. United States in 1980, France in 2006. Okay, so let me leave this here, and then, well, I said wildfire in the title, so let me just conclude wildfire as well. These are the number of fire numbers or area burned. So wildfire is a tricky thing because warming and climate change and droughts exacerbate wildfires, but human management of wildfire affects the trends as well. So if you look at number of fires, there is actually a decrease over this period of 1991 to 2015. But if you look at the area burned and the suppression cost, then it has gone up. So humans have suppressed fires successfully, but at great cost. But they are not able to reduce the amount of area burned by the wildfires, and the intensity of fires is also supposed to be going up, and there are you remember the Australian wildfire, which killed something like 1 billion animals, which is really not very pretty. World's top 10 wildfires associated with the highest mortality for the 1900 to 2013 period. The latest one here is 2003. Again, others don't rank after that, but US, Indonesia, People's Republic of China, Australia, US, France, Australia, Canada, Australia, and Greece for various years. 2003 is the last one here, and you can see the number of deaths. Obviously, not as high as droughts and wildfire and heat waves and floods, but nonetheless, wildfires leave massive loss of property, displacement of people, and so on. Okay, so I will come to the floods in the next podcast, but there is also something called attribution of these events to global warming that goes on because something like the 2010 Russian heat wave created controversy because one study said the heat wave could not be attributed to climate change. Another study said it could be. It turned out that one was looking at the probability of that heat wave occurring, which was not changed. It did occur on an expected frequency, but its intensity was highly amplified by climate change. So when you do cause attribution, you have to be aware of what you are attributing. Is it the frequency of the event or the intensity of the event, amplitude of the event? Okay, so frequency also gets changed. For example, floods that could happen once in 50 years may begin to happen once in 20 years. A decadal drought may begin to happen every few years, and so on. So that's called loading the dice, where nature throws dice, but climate change, global warming, begins to throw up some numbers more often than normal. Okay, so these are the things we have to remember when we are looking at extreme weather events causing disasters and health outcomes. Okay.